Okay, so we start day 6 of the Eagle's Nest Trail, and I've stayed very close to Rabsztyn Castle, so as I was a bit too late to go inside yesterday, I'll go inside today. And then I have about 25 kilometers to go. One thing I'll say about the previous day, which I'll try not to recap too much, but the Polish desert was pretty cool. You know, it definitely had a very unique feel to it, and it's one of those things that I think most people should see. It's like a bucket list item for sure. But yeah, today, as I was saying, I've got about 25 kilometers to go, and I'm holding up. My ankles sometimes complain, my back often complains. I'm trying to take things carefully, trying to avoid taking any kind of major injuries, and yeah, I'm really enjoying this trip. It's weird to think that, you know, tomorrow is like the last day of the hike. It's kind of going to be weird going back to reality after this, but yeah, certainly I will enjoy sleep and rest afterwards. But for now, come and join me as I show you more of Małopolska, where we finally are.
Dzień dobry and welcome to A Brit in Poland. With this channel, I travel across the country, I bring you the culture, and I show you just how amazing Poland is. So I invite you on my journey. If you want to see more, I have Facebook and Instagram profiles, which you will find links to in the description below. And if you want to really help out, you can turn to my Patreon or Patronite accounts, again in the description. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoy this video. Please like, share and subscribe. Do zobaczenia.
Rabsztyn Castle rises from a limestone outcrop known as Pieskowa Skała, or Raven's Rock. Its white walls seeming to grow directly from the stone beneath them. The castle began to take shape during the 14th century, when Casimir the Great strengthened Poland's western frontier with the chain of fortifications that would eventually become known as the Eagle's Nests. By now, I had followed that chain through every imaginable state of survival. Reconstructed castles, magnificent ruins, lonely fragments in the forest, and occasionally 4 walls requiring a generous supply of imagination. Rabsztyn was compact but distinctive, its towers and walls arranged across several levels of rock. In the 16th century, it passed into the hands of the Bona family, who transformed the medieval fortress into a more comfortable Renaissance residence. The castle still occasionally performed its original duty. During the disputed royal election of 1587, its defenders successfully resisted forces supporting the Habsburg claimant Maximilian. But, as with so many castles along this trail, the decisive blow came during the Swedish deluge. Swedish troops looted and burned Rabsztyn in 1657, and although parts remained inhabited for a time, the castle was gradually abandoned and its stone reused elsewhere. Restoration has since given some shape back to the ruins. I spent around half an hour exploring them, following a surprisingly energetic group of senior visitors through the castle and up to the tower overlooking the surrounding countryside. Rabsztyn was smaller than many of the fortresses I had already visited, but this was my final solitary castle ruin before reaching Ojciów. And just beyond its walls stood a small wooden cottage containing a story of an entirely different kind. That cottage was Chata Kocjana, dedicated to Antoni Kocjan, a local man whose remarkable life stretched from pioneering aviation to wartime intelligence. Before the war, Kocjan became one of Poland's leading glider designers, His aircraft helped establish the country as a major force in gliding, breaking records, and being produced under licenses from across Europe. During the German occupation, he joined the Home Army and led its aviation intelligence. His network gathered crucial information about the Nazis' secret V-1 and V-2 weapons, which was then passed to the Allies. Kocjan had already survived imprisonment in Auschwitz, but in 1944 he was arrested again by the Gestapo and executed at Warsaw's Pawiak prison. The cottage itself was modest, and I was its only visitor. But the caretaker welcomed me inside and showed me a short film about his life, revealing how someone from this quiet corner of Poland became an engineer, resistance officer, and one of the largely forgotten heroes of the Second World War. With Rabsztyn behind me, it was time to return to the trail and begin the long journey towards Pieskowa Skała. The route led me away from the village, across a busy main road and into another deep stretch of forest. After the castles, caves, and desert of the previous days, this was the simpler rhythm of the trail. Follow the red markers, place one foot in front of the other, and trust that something interesting would eventually appear. What appeared first was a table. Not a damp log, a collapsing bench, or a suspicious plank held together by optimism, but a genuinely sturdy table with seats on either side. After almost a week of discovering that the Polish wilderness had surprisingly little respect for tired hikers, it felt almost luxurious. I stopped there for a short rest before continuing through the forest. By the sixth day, moments like this had become part of the routine. Walk until my legs complained, and find somewhere to sit. Offer them a brief and entirely dishonest promise that the difficult part was over, and then continue. The trees eventually began to thin, giving way to small fields and more open countryside. But the trail was still saving one unwelcome surprise. A narrow path climbing sharply through high grass towards the plateau above. It was a beautifully green, peaceful, and almost certainly much steeper than it looked. As I climbed, I occasionally stopped to look back, watching the path disappear into the rolling green landscape below. The view provided a perfect excuse to catch my breath, although by day 6, I was no longer pretending that the view was the only reason I had stopped. At the top of the climb, I reached the small village of Zadola Kosmolowskia and discovered a bus shelter almost completely swallowed by climbing plants. With its wooden benches hidden beneath a canopy of leaves, it felt less like public transport infrastructure and more like a tiny woodland refuge. I took the invitation and stopped for one more rest before beginning the long, exposed walk across the plateau towards Sułoszowa. For almost a week, villages like this had marked the stages of my journey. Small, quiet places that I might never otherwise have known existed. Each had its own character, but almost all shared the familiar roadside crosses and shrines, decorated with flowers and carefully maintained by the people who lived around them. I knew I would miss these modest little stops, the benches, bus shelters, and village landmarks that had become temporary refuges along the trail. They were rarely the places I had set out to find, but together they had given the journey much of its character. And after one final rest beneath the leaves, I stepped back into the open countryside and began the long walk towards Sułoszowa. Beyond the village, the landscape opened completely. Fields stretched towards the horizon in every direction.
divided by narrow tracks and scattered with wildflowers. After so many kilometres beneath trees or between limestone walls, the sheer amount of space felt almost surreal. Somewhere along the fields, birds called to one another with strange electronic notes, as though the local wildlife had borrowed its sound card from a Super Nintendo. There was little shelter, and even less shade, but for once the trail ahead was mostly flat. A small mercy after the climb from the forest. I could see the path stretching far into the distance, with nothing ahead but fields, sky, and the occasional cluster of houses. From the moment I stepped onto the plateau, the view was breathtaking. The land seemed to fall away beneath a vast, dramatic horizon, with fields stretching out in every direction under an enormous sky. It felt completely different from anything else I had encountered along the trail. The colours shifted between deep green crops, pale grasses, and patches of wildflowers, while clouds moved slowly overhead. After days spent walking through enclosed forests and between limestone formations, the sheer scale and openness of the landscape was astonishing. After days spent walking towards castles, caves, and other landmarks, there was no single attraction here demanding my attention. The landscape itself was enough. With only one day remaining, I was beginning to realize how much I would miss this simple routine. For almost a week, each morning had given me a single purpose: put on the backpack, find the red trail markers, and keep walking towards somewhere I had never seen before. The world had become smaller, but also clearer. Food mattered when I was hungry, a bench mattered when I was tired, and every distinct village offered the promise of something new. I was exhausted and increasingly ready to reach the end, but out there, surrounded by fields beneath an enormous sky, ordinary life already seemed strangely distant. Eventually, shapes began to rise beyond the farmland. The open plateau was giving way to limestone once again, and ahead of me lay Sułoszowa, a village where the rocks appeared to have moved in first. As I approached Sułoszowa, the open fields gradually gave way to houses, and the limestone returned in spectacular fashion. Great white boulders rose between the buildings, beside gardens and along the roadside, as though the village had been constructed around a collection of sleeping giants. After the immense openness of the plateau, it felt like entering yet another completely different world. Sułoszowa is one of Poland's longest villages, stretching for several kilometers along a single main road, but the Eagle's Nest Trail approached it from above, following quieter lanes towards the Church of the Sacred Heart of Jesus. I stepped inside briefly, grateful for the chance to escape the road and rest in the cool silence. Throughout this journey, churches had often appeared at natural stopping points, places to sit, slow down, and gather myself before continuing. Outside, the trail wound between houses, roadside crosses, and increasingly dramatic outcrops of limestone. Here, the landscape had not been cleared away to make room for the village. The two simply existed together, with homes tucked beneath cliffs and enormous rocks standing almost casually amongst everyday life. Somewhere ahead, beyond this strange little village of houses and boulders, stood Pieskowa Skała. I knew I was close and tried to quicken my pace. Unfortunately, after 6 days of walking, my body interpreted quicken more as a vague suggestion than a direct instruction. By the time Pieskowa Skała appeared above the Pradnik Valley, I had almost nothing left. I had hurried through Sułoszowa hoping to reach the castle before it closed, but but reaching it properly would require one final climb, and my legs had firmly withdrawn their cooperation. So, as I had done at Ogrodzenitz, I accepted that the castle could wait until morning. I left the official trail and followed the road beneath it instead, catching occasional glimpses of the fortress through the trees. The change of route still brought me to one of the Jura's most recognizable landmarks. Beneath the castle stood Machuga Herculesa, the Club of Hercules. After encountering so many unusual rock formations along the trail, this was perhaps the strangest of them all. A huge stone club balanced on a base that looked far too small to support it. I admired it from the roadside, but there would be no lingering exploration. At this point, even standing still required negotiations, and there was still a considerable distance left to walk. The road twisted through the valley in a long series of bends, with rock faces frequently obscuring whatever might be approaching from the other side. There was little room to escape the traffic, and after 6 days on foot, it was not the safest or most relaxing final stretch. Eventually, I reached my accommodation. It felt less like a hotel and more like a spare room in a rural farmhouse. It was simple and slightly isolated, but it had the one feature I now valued above all others: a bed. First, however, I needed food. Google Maps appeared to show a nearby restaurant, so I headed back along the road in search of dinner. What I found was something rather more local. This was not a conventional roadside restaurant, but a small private enterprise spread across the collection of rustic buildings, one of which had a partially collapsed roof. It was not quite what I had imagined when following the map, but food was being served, and that was the only review category that mattered. I ordered a bowl of soup and a plate of kielbasa with bread. It was simple, filling, and exactly what I needed after the long walk. And when I got back to my apartment, the landlady gifted me what I can only assume is locally made beverage, which was rather strong, I gather. Tomorrow, I would return to Pieskowa Skała and enter Ojciec National Park for the final stage of the journey. But tonight, after 6 days of walking, the castle could wait. All I needed was food, sleep, and for nobody to mention another hill. But this has been day 6 of the Eagle's Nest Trail. We have one more day to go. I hope you have enjoyed the journey, and if you're just joining me at this point, I would recommend going back. Each day offers its own kind of magic. Thank you very much for watching. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and ideally follow me on Rumble, where I may have a more permanent future. But otherwise, do zobaczenia.